Online Class Philippines. Welcome to English 10. Today, we're going to talk about the elements of story or fiction. Elements of fiction and element of story in general can be used by the reader to increase their enjoyment and understanding of different literary pieces. So here are the major elements. We have the character, plot, setting, point of view, and tone. Let us first talk about the characters. Characters or character is the mental, emotional, and social qualities to distinguish one entity from another. It can be a people, an animal, a spirit, an automaton, or a piece of furniture and other animated object. Character development is the change that a character undergoes from the beginning of a story to the end. Young children can note this. As time goes by in a story, character change. Maybe the character at first is kind, then eventually the character will be a fighter. The importance of a character to the story determines how fully the character is developed. Characters can be primary, secondary, minor, or main. Types of character. Let us talk about the round characters. These are those the reader or listener or viewer gets to know well. So they are the character that really talk about or go around in the story. They have a variety of traits that make them believable. Central characters are well developed in good literature. Example, Meg, Claudia, Duck, Wilbur, and Jess are the central character or protagonist, hero or heroine. When we say round character, it is like a circle. When we say circle, the character need to change, meaning from one point in time, the character will be undergoing a process of changing his or her behavior, understanding, philosophy, characteristics, and the way how he or she will solve the conflict. Second type of character, flat characters. They are less well developed and have fewer or limited traits or belong to a group, class, or a stereotype. Fern in Charlotte's Web, a character foil or minor character whose trait contrasts with a main character. The lamb is young and naive as Wilbur, but she is smug instead of humble. When we say flat character, they do not change at all. They are somewhat called a supporting character. At the beginning and until the end, they will not change because they are not the focus of the story. The focus of the story is the round character, while the flat characters will remain. They will just remain on their status, on their philosophy, on their strength, on their characteristic throughout the story. That's why they are called flat, meaning the same, or it's not going up or going down. Another, anthropomorphic. So it is a characterization of animals, inanimate objects, or natural phenomena as people. Skilled authors can use this to create fantasy, even from stuffed toys, like Winnie the Pooh. The characterization or characterizing of inanimate objects from tiny soldiers to trees and so on is represented in Andersen's work and the ballet The Nutcracker Journey. Sometimes authors tend to make characters from animals or inanimate objects. We can see it in a lot of works or literary pieces, like in The Beauty and the Beast. You can see a moving kettle, a moving cup, and so on and so forth. And the last one, we have the animal characters. In realism are best when the animals act only like animals, as in The Incredible Journey. Sometimes in fables, animals are the characters in the story. They are not human, they are not inanimate objects, they are still moving, they still have life, but they are classified as animals. Those are the types of characters that we can encounter in a story. Now, let us talk about the plot. Plot is the order in which things move and happen in a story. Chronological order is when a story relates events in order in which they happened. So sometimes the order of the plot interchanges depending on the author's instinct and the author's right to go on with the story. When we say chronological, it will start from the first move until the end. There will be no flashback and there will be no foreshadow. Types of plot. Let's talk about progressive plot. Have a central climax followed by denouement. Example in Charlotte's Web and A Wrinkle in Time. So example, in the progressive plot, the climax progresses, so meaning from the low intensity going up to the central climax, then after that it will go down. This is the basic pattern of the plots. Next, we have the episodical plots. Have one incident or short episode linked to another by a common character or unifying theme, maybe through chapters, used by authors to explore character personalities, the nature of their existence, and the flavor of a certain time period. Sometimes the films or the episodes or the series that we can watch in the television or the books that we can read are under these episodical plots. They are divided into different episodes, and the episode is linked to another episode, and when you connect each episode, you will come up with one concrete plot. This is the pattern of a plot. It will start with the exposition, followed by the rising action, then the climax, falling action, and the resolution. When we say exposition or introduction, this part of the plot establishes the main characters, protagonists, and setting. We are going to present the characters, the setting, at this part. Example, in a kingdom far, far away, there lived a beautiful maiden. So that is the exposition. We get to know who's who, as well as when and where the story takes place. At this point, the reader is just getting to know the world of the story and what it's going to be all about. So there is no story yet. At this time, we are introducing the background and the characters to the reader or to the viewer. Here, we're shown what normal looks like for the character. The primary conflict or tension around which the plot revolves is also usually introduced here in order to set up the course of events for the rest of the narrative. At the latter part of the introduction, plot may be presented. But again, they are not established yet, they will just be presented. Next, the rising action. In this part of plot, the primary conflict is introduced and is built upon the create tension within the story and the reader, who should ideally be feeling more and more drawn to the text. The conflict may affect one character or multiple characters. The author should have clearly communicated to the reader the stakes of this central conflict. Now, in this part, conflict will be presented. The problem will now arise. The problem will start to bring disaster to the character. In other words, what are the possible consequences? The benefits? This is the part of the plot that sets the rest of the plot in motion. So meaning, in this part of the plot, tension starts to goes up until it reaches the climax. Climax or turning point. It is the most important part of the story. The climax is the biggest plot point, which puts our character in a situation wherein a choice must be made that will affect the rest of the story. In this part, all the tragedy will be coming their way. At this point, the character needs to choose whether to come up or to avenge or to fight the conflict that he or she is in. This is the crucial moment that all the writing action has been building up. So from the writing action, it builds up the conflict, then in the climax, there it will come like a boom. And the point at which we overreacting conflict is finally addressed. What will the character do and what will happen as a result? Tensions are highest here, instilling in the reader a sense of excitement, dread, and urgency. So this is the most exciting part of the story. Falling action. This is when the tension has been released and the story begins to wind down. So now the tension starts to loose. We start to see the result of the climax and the main character's action and get a sense of what this means for them and the world they inhabit. How did their choices affect themselves and those around them? At this point, the author also ties up loose ends in the main plot and any subplots. Now here we are going to start to see the result of the decision of the character, whether it will be good or it will be bad. Resolution or denouement. This final plot or point of plot is when everything has been wrapped up and the new world and the new sense of normalcy for the character has been established. So we are going to wrap up the story here. The conflict from the climax has been resolved and all loose end has been neatly tied up. Unless the author is purposely setting up the story for a sequel. Sometimes when we have sequel, the story is not almost finished yet. Maybe the problem has been resolved, but again another problem will start to come up. And this will make you think of another part of the story. There is a sense of finality and closure here, making the reader feel that there is nothing more than they can learn or gain from the narrative. Now, let us talk about the setting. Setting includes the time and the place. For example, the time is long time ago, or 7th of March, or year 1925. Place, kingdom far away. Can also happen in London or in Manila, Philippines. So that is the setting. Next, let us talk about the point of view. Point of view is determined by the author's descriptions of characters, setting, and events told to the reader throughout the story. So, who is the narrator of the story? It could be the first person, the second, or the third. Let's talk about it. First person point of view. The character is telling the story. Sometimes the character tends to narrate the story by him or herself. You will see the words I, me, or we in first person point of view. This point of view is commonly used for narrative and autobiography. Sometimes the character itself is the one who tells the story, so that is the first person point of view. It can be singular or plural. Singular form uses I or me, and the plural uses the word we. Both are used to give the writer's personal perspective. Again, when we take first person point of view, the character is the one telling the story, and he is also incorporated with the story. Second person point of view. The writer has the narrator speaking to the reader. The words you, your, and yours are used in this point of view. Some common uses for second person point of view are directions, business writing, technical writing, song lyrics, speeches, and advertising. If the writer is talking about you or talking to the reader, then that is the second person point of view. Since the writer is the first person and he is talking to you, now he's talking to the second person point of view. Third person point of view. It has an external narrator telling the story. The words he, she, it, or they are used in this point of view. This point of view can be either omniscience, where the reader knows what all the characters are doing in the story, or it can be limited to having the reader only know what is happening to one specific character. Third person can also be gender specific or neutral, singular or plural, and this time, someone is narrating the other person's story. It is not their story. Maybe a person who have just heard the story will be telling the story again. So that is the third person point of view. Tone. Tone tells us the author feels about his or her subject. Words express the writer's attitude toward his or her work, subject, and readers. Without vocal inflection to help convey tone, the writer must choose words with great care. We often describe a writer's tone but are not aware of how we discover the tone. It sort of creeps into our consciousness. Tone can be serious, humorous, satirical, passionate, sensitive, zealous, indifferent, caring, caustic. So it depends upon the author if what will be the tone. So it is his right to determine the tone that he would like to inject in his story. I hope you learned something today. Thank you for sharing your time with me. I want to see you next time.